Welcome to Animal Posse, the podcast dedicated to the people and rescues making a difference in the lives of animals.
Today, we're unlocking the profound, often unseen spiritual power of animals. Please help me welcome our expert on this topic, Bonnie Poirier.
Hi, Bonnie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here.
I'm excited about our conversation. We are going to talk about animals as our spiritual directors.
Correct.
Before we get started with that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Bonnie Poirier, and I live in Southeast Louisiana. I was ordained in the Congregational Church back in the early 90s, and it wasn't long after that I became part of an ecumenical St. Francis of Assisi society. And that's when I moved into the ministry role with the ministry of St. Francis of Assisi. I've been working pretty much with the area of animals. It started off more environmental. And then we had this storm in 2005 that you will recall. It was called Hurricane Katrina. And prior to that, we did have people who saw this spirituality of having pets and with nature, but it really came into the forefront with Hurricane Katrina because for years, what we would do when a hurricane would come, we would evacuate for a day, maybe two, but our pets were not allowed to travel with us. Katrina comes in and we're in a total crisis to the point where there's this place called Lamar Dixon that opens up. And it made the national news night after night. You would see people going to Lamar Dixon looking for their beloved pets that were left behind. No one was ever blamed or at fault for this. And the realization came about this can happen to us, this can happen to me. And people started looking at that time 20 years ago. It's more than the needs of the working dogs or these just feeding our animals. They were part of our family. And even though we had known this for many years, just seeing this on the news just put it more clearly. These pets are our family. And as our family, they do everything with us. They eat with us, they sleep, and they live within our homes. And they even share, if you will, our spirituality. And that's what I would like to discuss with you this evening.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this topic. I'm a very spiritual person myself. I have some beliefs about animals and spirituality, so I'm interested to see what you have to say about it. And usually I do a lot of research into a subject when before I
Mhm.
go in or a rescue, I try to learn about them. And in this case, I'm going in blind. So we're just going to see where the conversation takes us.
I believe that our animals are living reminders of God's presence in all creation. They reflect that gentleness, that loyalty, that unconditional love in a way that feels pure and uncomplicated. And when we pause to notice their quiet wisdom, whether it's that steady gaze of our beloved dog, or we go outside on our way to work and we're greeted in the morning by the song of a bird. And maybe we're traveling down a country road and we notice that graceful stillness in a deer. And suddenly, in those times, we are invited back into awareness of the divine rhythm of life that is sacredly established. And animals teach us just how to be, to live in the present moment, to trust, to love without words, and to forgive easily. And in their innocence, they remind us that spirituality isn't only found in church pews or sacred texts, but also in the living, breathing world that God has made for us. And their presence can open our hearts to gratitude, compassion, wonder, all spiritual practices in themselves, of course. And many people find that caring for or simply being near animals softens our spirits and even quiets our minds and can even deepen our connection with God, our creator, whatever name you may have for the all being. And through them, we learn reverence for life. We learn humility in creation and the truth that all living things are interconnected under the loving care of our loving God. And some years ago, I wanted to know more about the science of this. How are we connected? Because, yes, I had practiced for years the meditating with our pets. If you've never done that, it's getting into that rhythmic breathing with them and sitting in that quietness with them. And I came across this, Dixie, that you're going to enjoy. Some researchers at Northwestern University's Department of Neurobiology, they had found evidence that was previously unknown in that there are unknown neurons in an animal's brain, especially our dogs, that are activated when the animal is in a what they call a waiting mode. Those neurons are located in the area of the brain's temporal lobe where we know that spatial memory is encoded and acts, if you will, like an internal pacemaker mechanism, they think. The study was set out to prove that this area of the brain might also encode time memory. But even with the discovery of those once unknown neurons, they're still not sure how dogs tell time, as this study doesn't suggest that animals can instinctively judge time. But I bet that when our time changes, that your dog will be waiting by their dog bowl at that time that we had before the time changed. They just, and like I said, they think it's like an internal pacemaker, like a waiting mode. And that's why our animals can be our alarm clocks and so forth. And what they have also with this, and this study came about when we had that great tsunami way back, I believe it was in 2001. And what they noticed was all of these animals were going up into the hills of Sri Lanka. And why are these animals just going up into the hills this Christmas Eve? Why are they just venturing up there? And even house pets were going stir crazy, people were saying. And just hours later, a deadly tsunami wiped out part of Sri Lanka. And some of the things that we know is wolves will howl before a storm, or cows' ears will itch and twitch before it rains, and they also lie down on the ground. By the way, if you see cows lying down on the ground, we've got a pretty good storm coming. We know that birds and geese and roosters always give us warnings. How do they know these things? A rooster, when it's noisy at night, we know that storms are coming by morning. We know that elk and deer go down mountains before heavy rainstorms. And this is interesting. When a deer coats are gray in October, we can see that as a sign of an upcoming harsh winter. And they say that when a cat lies in the sun in the winter, that we're going to have a delayed winter, that may be the Punxsutawney Phil predicting the weather, the winter. But we also know, and we can also remember when we have hurricanes here, and we are no strangers to that. When we hear birds and squirrels outside, we know that we have plenty of time to get ready. This is the time to get ready for the hurricane. But when it gets quiet, that's when we need to pay attention. And how many times have we had a rainstorm come through and we know that it's over because we can hear the frogs croaking or the birds chirping or even the squirrels getting more active? So people may think that, hey, look, that's just part of their biology, but it's also part of their spiritual essence as well. And there is so much for us to learn if we are willing to sit in the quiet and pay attention to our animals, whether there are animals that we live with or the animals in the wild. as long as we're paying attention to them and getting in tune with them, I think that will help deepen our own spirituality.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I know from my own observations that, like, I can tell if I'm in an adoption center looking at animals or helping animals or even for my own animals, foster animals, pets, or whatever. Somehow I can instinctively look at them and I can know when they're not feeling well, even though they may appear to feel fine. And
Yes.
and so it's to me, it's something that they're signaling, there's something that I'm picking up with, and I'm really big too on the energy aspect of it, because I always tell that to people, especially when they come to look at my cats when they're up for adoptions or my kittens, because it's the type of energy that my household has. We're very quiet, so, because of that energy, my kittens don't tend to do good with a very noisy, and when I say noisy, I don't necessarily mean like noise, but it's just a different level of activity just because of the way that we carry ourselves and we hold our energy. So, they don't always do good with every person. They do good with people that have an energy that's similar to ours in my household.
And I can see that when you have that frenetic energy that feeds so many things. It's you can walk into a room and you can feel the energy in a room. Cats are really good about that. I believe cats are very intuitive. And some people will say orange cats are more cats are intuitive, period. And I do know that I have a son. I have several sons, but I had a son who was fighting in war in Afghanistan. It was going really awful. And I kept watching the news. And I was trying to keep my energy within. I was trying to keep myself calm and at peace. And I was doing a really bad job with it, apparently, because one evening I'm sitting in my chair and I just wanted to burst out crying, but I had other people in my home and I had to be the calm one. One of my cats, and all of my cats typically come from the street or adoption centers. This one particular cat came up to me, placed her chest against my chest, placed an arm on each side of my neck, and she put her head against my chin. And when she pressed her chest against my chest, she started purring. And when she started purring, that's when the tears started flowing out of my eyes. And this cat, I know for certain, picked up on my energy and knew that I needed care. And she gave me that care. That was healing. The energy she gave me, that healed me and got me through the night and through the next few weeks because she would come in the evenings and always sit on my lap, just like she belonged right there. I am here to protect you.
Yeah, I've seen that too with my cats as well. If I'm not feeling well, it's like they seem to know before I do sometimes because I'll get migraines and they'll all come lay with me and they do the purring, they sit on me. And the purring, it is a healing frequency. And I know a lot of people will probably just think, oh no, it's just purring. But it definitely is more than that. They can definitely pick up on things, especially I know like people that might have problems with their pets. When you think about it, and my vet actually told me this too, that she said sometimes animals' illnesses will mirror the owner's illnesses. And
Yes.
yeah, and then not just that, but also if you have an animal that is misbehaving and they might be acting crazy, they might be acting anxious, you also have to go back and think about what am I thinking right now? Because you might be projecting that out and your animal might actually be picking up on it and just going with that energy. Because I find they do feed off of our energy. So they tend to act like you act a lot of the times.
And I have to tell you, when we look at animals and spirituality, many times I will go to the Bible. And there is a couple of verses from the Old Testament of Job, and these words resonate with me. And it's ask the animals, and they will teach you, the birds of the air, and they will tell you. And I believe those verses are so very true because if we ask them, they will tell us. And it goes on to say, even the plants of the earth will instruct us, and they will instruct us. The fish of the sea will inform us, and they will inform us. So I do believe this, that if we pay attention to them, they pick up on our energy. That's how we communicate with each other. Yes, I do use words. Do you want a treat? Do you want to go outside? But by golly, they pick up on our energy. And you are so right with that, that they know us instinctively. So, yes, we're spiritually connected with them. And do we have time for a little story?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. It comes from the words of Second Samuel. Now, we believe that the story that I'm about to tell you is based on what is called a bummer lamb. And you know what? These are lambs that are rejected by the mom. Once that baby is rejected, that mother wants nothing to do with it. And as a matter of fact, the mom will even become aggressive and even try to kill it. And they will. The way that these lambs survive is told in this story, and it happens to this day. In the words of Second Samuel, again in the Old Testament, the Lord sent Nathan to David. And when he came to him, he said, there are two men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a large number of cattle and sheep, but the poor man had nothing except one little lamb that he had bought. He raised her, and she grew up with him and his children. She shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. This little ewe lamb was like a daughter to him. We are family. We are protectors for one another, and we're playmates. And when we read in the Bible that this little ewe lamb was like a daughter to this man, that says a lot, because even to this day, these little precious lambs that are rejected by their mothers, they will get super depressed. Their hands will hang so low that they almost hit the ground. And there are reasons that this happened, but what saves them, and like I said, it happens to this day, a shepherd or a human has to intervene and because this lamb is going to die, rejected and alone. How does that happen? Those lambs are placed against the chest. They hold it against the chest so that lamb can hear our very heartbeats. And those lambs have to be hand fed, kept warm, wrapped in blankets, held close to the chest. And as these lambs grow, they become connected to the humans that saved their lives. So here you're in rescue, and you know these animals that you are helping and rescuing, some of these precious cats that you have and kittens, they know that their lives may be lost if something or someone doesn't intervene. And I can tell you, you are literally placing a spiritual imprint on these precious animals, and they will remember you. I don't know if you have reconnected with any of them, over time, but they will remember you. Our animals become imprinted, connected to us spiritually, because physically, when they were rejected and broken, we saved them. And by saving them, they know that we are there for them. And as a result, they become there for us in that we have so many lessons to learn from them. Like I said, regarding spiritual issues, if we just sit with them, and it's so easy that we can learn so much from them. There is a book by Mirabai Starr. It's a new book, fairly new. And the title of the book is Ordinary Mysticism. And she has an entire book dedicated to seeking mysticism, to seeking that connection with God within the ordinary. And many times within that book, she talks about being in nature and listening to all of nature around us. And our cats, I can't tell you how many cats I have had come in to my life that I may have rescued them from the street, or one was from a dog fight. One was from a very bad situation that a human had with this cat, or even rescue. And they know. And once we have made that connection, there is that connection that sustains them, but it also sustains us and builds us up time and time again. And you know that old Indian legend, which says that when a human dies, you know that bridge, that they must cross that bridge to get into heaven. At the head of that bridge is the animal that every human has encountered in that lifetime. And those animals, based on what they know of us, decides which of us may cross the bridge and which are turned away.
Yeah, now I have a story too that kind of goes to what you were saying about the rescue and the
Okay.
fostering.
Uh-huh.
I do bottle kittens. Sometimes I have the moms with the babies. So, this one particular litter, I had the mom with the babies. You still have a close attachment to them, but it's not like bottle feeding them because their mom's there. So, they're not totally dependent on you. But you go in there to socialize them. So, when I went in there to socialize them, it's the funniest thing. There was this one little kitten in the litter and he just learned to walk, and he was obsessed with me. Needless to say, he became my favorite out the litter. He got
Mhm.
adopted at 8 weeks old, and when he was about 5 or 6 months old, we got a call for him to be returned. It was one of those situations, I believe it was like the boyfriend or the cat, and they chose the
Mhm.
boyfriend. So we had to go pick him
Mhm.
up, and I actually had him back up for adoption. And of course, he kept getting overlooked and overlooked. And I was taking a meditation class. And when I went and did this meditation class, it was one of these ones where you're going to meditate and let's see if you have a special animal that's connecting with you. Who shows up in the meditation? So at that point, I realized he's meant to live with me.
Yes.
I actually considered him my soul cat because I truly believe that from the time he could walk, he knew he was meant to be with me.
And I have to tell you, I believe that with every ounce of my being, that we do have soul animals. There was a movie and a book called A Dog's Purpose. And I don't know if you saw it or read the book, but it's about the evolution of a soul that incarnates from dog after dog and I reconnect later in life. I believe that to be true. I believe that our animals that have passed on help lead us to the next animals that we have to have within our lives. And I will tell you this, that as long as we have that spiritual connection with them, miracles, it may be small, but miracles will happen. I work a lot in death, dying, and grief. And I work a lot. Every year, I go to Heaven's Pets in New Orleans, and we have a large pet blessing. And this one woman would come year after year, and we've been doing this for 15 years now. And she has been grieving the loss of dogs and cats over the years. And finally, a few years ago, she came to a pet blessing, and she brings pictures and a couple of urns, and I bless them. And we got to talking, and she said, "There is just no way that I could bring another animal into my life. It's just so hard losing them." And I said, "I understand that. And I'm not asking you to get another animal into your home, but you do live with nature, don't you?" And she sat there and she said, "Oh, no, since my husband died, my backyard is just awful. I've not done anything. My house is awful. I don't have the energy. I can't do that. I can't deal with all of that nonsense." And I said, "Just pay attention." So one day she realized she needed to go into her backyard and she starts looking around. She says, "Oh, this place is a wreck." So she started to go into one corner. And as she moves some trash out of the way, she startles a squirrel. And she thought, "Oh, wow, I was not anticipating this." So the next day she goes out and there's the squirrel again. So she thought, well, maybe I need to do something about this. So she heads off and she gets herself into a pet store. I think it was called Jefferson Feed and Seed. And she said, I have a squirrel in my backyard. I don't know how to take care of a squirrel. What do I do? So the guy behind the counter thought that she wanted to get rid of the squirrel. And she says, "Oh, no, you're going in a different direction. I need to know how to take care of the squirrel." So he says, "Oh, that's easy. Here's a squirrel feeder and here's some food." So lo and behold, she starts realizing, I need to clean my backyard because this squirrel isn't going anywhere. So she starts feeding the squirrel and taking care of the squirrel. And lo and behold, more squirrels start showing up. And then she finds herself getting a bird feeder, and these birds start showing up, and she gets a bird bath, and then she didn't realize this was going to happen. She starts getting raccoons that come into her yard that are bathing in her bird bath. And when as she's cleaning her yard and making it a little paradise really in the back, she noticed that she welcomed squirrels and birds and raccoons and even a rabbit that has started burrowing under the fence to come visit with her. And every evening and every morning, she goes out there and she feeds all of these animals and cleans out the bowls, puts fresh water in the bird bath. And that's her life now. And so I saw her just a few weeks ago at the last Heaven's Pets event. And she told me this story. And she said, I had a feeling that you were telling me, yes, maybe it's okay that I don't have a pet in my house, but I certainly have pets all around me. They're wild animals. They'll not live with me in my home, but I care for them. And that gives me such great purpose. And I said, you just hit on the right word. Our animals give us purpose. We think that we're caring for them, and we do. We think that we are providing a safe place, and we do. But they, in turn, give us purpose, and you just simply can't buy that.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a beautiful story too. And on another note to that is I get upset sometimes when little animals or even adult animals will show up at a person's house and it's just like a single one. It could be a dog, it could be a cat, it could be a puppy, a kitten, a bird, any kind of animal needing help, even, or maybe not needing help. And I always believed that animal was sent there for a purpose. And
Yes.
it always is upsetting to me when I see somebody like, "Oh, this little tiny animal, it showed up at my house. Can somebody take it?" And it's, man, I'm like, I wish you would just sit down and look for a second because that animal was sent to you for a purpose.
Yes. I believe that with every ounce of my soul. Yes. And we live on 3 acres by a river. And over the years, we have had several cats wander in our yard and many times kittens. And I believe that they come to us for a purpose. And it's our obligation. That's our duty to take care of them because so many times I've been asked, will I see my pet again? The one that's passed. Will I see my pet again? And as I've said, I believe that our pets are our greatest theologians and our best spiritual directors. And those pets that wander onto your property, they're there to teach us and to connect us. They're our link, our earthly, tangible link to the heavenly realm. And when they wander onto our property for our care and our welfare, they're going to provide us with so much about God's creation and our own spiritual path that will bring us back to the heavenly realm. So just having them wander onto our property, yeah, I'm right there with you. They're there as little angels, if you will, to help bring us further along our own spiritual path.
Do you think some of them reincarnate?
I have to tell you, I do. I do. I had not long after Katrina, I guess about a year after Katrina, I found a puppy wandering the parking lot of Walmart. And I picked this puppy up and I did look around. Is anybody missing a puppy? Drove around the parking lot a bit. No. And I realized this puppy was probably not in the right place. It was probably dumped out. So I brought it home. I bathed her. I named her. She started growing and I started realizing this pet is not just a pet. She's here for a purpose. And Dixie, she became, with training, she became an emotional support animal, not for me, but for groups that I had for grief. And so she became a comfort dog, if you will. And she lived with me until her natural death, which unfortunately was at the age of 11. And I was devastated. I felt part of my voice passed away. And I just like crying in the night, what am I going to do? So I have a friend who is a vet, and she said, Bonnie, I need for you to come to the shelter because she works in a shelter. And I need you to bless this dog. This dog needs to go home to a quiet place to die. And so I said, sure, I'll do this. So this was just about 4 or 5 days after I lost my dog, Lanyap. And so I walk into the shelter, and there is this pit bull that they had picked up on the side of the road. They thought it was dead. She had heartworms. She had obviously been used as a puppy machine. And I just took one look at this dog and I looked at my friend and I said, I think we have the quiet home. We have the quiet, calm home. Let me bring her home. So I brought her home and I knew she was going to die, but she lived 18 more months. And what this dog taught me about grieving was enormous. I learned so many lessons. She restored herself back to a health that I could take her for walks and we could have fun together and just enjoy life. And what she did is she helped me because my dog Lanyap's death, even though it was a natural death, it was a very sudden death and I wasn't prepared. But by bringing this dog, this foster hospice dog into my home, I was able to get through that grieving process. And when she passed, I felt complete. Now, the story doesn't end there. I went back to the very same shelter after her name was Happy, after Happy died. And I said, I know that I have to get another dog. I know this. And I would have dreams where it felt like Happy was tugging me back to that shelter. So I would go to the shelter, I would look around, nope, nope. Then one day I sat down, I went online and I found this dog who was skin and bones, looked terrified. It was curled up in a little C. And I called the shelter about this dog and I said, where is this dog? I've been to your shelter twice or 3 times. I've not seen this dog. And I said, this dog hides. It's terrified. And I said, that's my dog. I went back to the shelter. I got that dog, brought her home, and she's still with me to this day. I am convinced. Now, when people think of reincarnation, they think of one dog being born into a puppy. But I do believe that what I experienced is my dog's way of leading me to my next dog, which helps me believe that, yes, I believe it's possible that the souls of our beloved animal companions will evolve and keep us going in this life. And whether they stay with us until we pass away and our souls travel on, or if it continues on, I don't know. But I do believe you were talking about soul companions. I believe that. So, what I experienced with three separate dogs, I believe that, yes, there is a great possibility, and I do believe it's possible.
Yeah, I asked because personally, I believe that I have had the same cat with me 3 times now because the personality, everything is exactly the same as the one that passed. So I think for like almost my entire life, I've had the same cat with me. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't care if people think I sound crazy.
But when you stop and you think, you said this cat has the personality, and how can we deny that?
Yeah, and it's in the eyes too. Like the eyes are the same. When you look
Mhm.
into the eyes, you know it. I know some people that might not believe in this are going to have a hard time hearing that, and they probably think it's nonsense, but it's true. You can look at them and it's something in the eyes, like you can see to their inner soul. And
And I believe that. I truly do. Like I said, with this dog that I found wandering in a years ago in a parking lot, how did this puppy get scrawny little puppy that needed deep, tender care and she got it? How is it that she led me to another dog that desperately needed a home of love and peace so she could die and who taught me lessons about grief? Mind you, up to that point, I had spent several decades working in death, dying, and grief. I learned so much from this dog about death, dying, and grief that textbooks never taught me. And that was at the soul level. And that dog led me to this precious dog that I have in my home now, who truly desperately needed, again, love, that deep, committed, unconditional love, so that perhaps that soul legacy that inspires us can live on. But like I said, I don't know if that animal is with us for the balance of our lives or if it will continue on after our soul transcends.
another thing that I would like to touch on is I have heard that animals in your house also protect you from like negative energy or even possibly negative things. What do you think about that?
Oh, another story. A deaf friend of mine, this is way back in the 70s. A deaf friend of mine got a cat from the streets. It was one of those things that she walked out and bloop, there is a kitten in her path. So she picks this kitten up. The kitten grows up and they're living together in an apartment in uptown New Orleans. So every time she went home, she and her kitten companion spent their evenings together. One day she is sitting in her living room and she said that she could feel it. Her cat, she could feel her cat just bristling, and she sees a foot coming in a window. And when this person got into her home and both feet hit the ground of her home, her apartment, this cat went wild and attacked this intruder. So, as she's seeing this happen, she had time to get out of her apartment, go across the way, and the person they were able to call the police. Now, here's the thing. This cat did such a whammy on this intruder. That intruder was still in her apartment when the police showed up, and this guy needed medical attention. So, yes, I truly believe that our pets can keep us from harm. We hear these stories, but until you see it and experience it, I have a dear friend whose dog kept just literally driving her nuts. He would put his nose in her left armpit and push against her armpit at the top of her breast. Just kept doing it over and wouldn't stop. And she's like, why is it's got to be the smell of my armpit? Lo and behold, she had a mammogram. They found cancer in her left armpit and at the top of her left breast.
Wow.
And that's where her dog putting his nose right in that area. We also hear, and I experienced this myself with another friend whose child had seizures, debilitating seizures. And this child had several surgeries, had part of her brain removed to help with the seizures. Nothing helped. One day, someone said, have you thought about getting a seizure alert dog? And she said, not really. I'm not a dog person. I know one. No, I hadn't thought about that. She kept thinking about it and she looked into it, and her daughter was able to get a seizure alert dog. There is training involved with this. So this child has a seizure alert dog, alerts her prior to seizures. So she's able to take her medication. This child who was always told, oh no, the seizures are so bad, this child is going to be on disability the rest of her life. This child graduated college and is working now as a CPA. She lives a good, vibrant life because of a dog.
That's
If she
amazing.
didn't have a dog in her life, she would not know. So she's able to live. She was able to go to high school, college, graduate, get a job, and all because of a dog.
That is amazing. Before we end our conversation, what would
Hmm?
tell people who don't believe that animals have souls?
I get that so very often. I and I even get people who will say, my pastor told me that our dogs do not have souls. And as I said, I believe with all my heart that we are all here to create good on this planet. That includes our animals. I believe that we're here to share our kindness. That includes our animals. And when we look at the different verses in the Bible, and the very first one that people come up with is from Genesis, where it says, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air over the. Dominion is not the same as domination. It comes from that Hebrew word yorad, which means to have communion with. Can you imagine if all these centuries, if we had read, let us have communion with, our stewardship with the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and with the cattle, it would have a whole other connotation. So I believe that a lot of it comes from the Bible itself. When we read from the book of Job, ask and we will be told. When we read that story that I just told you about with that bummer lamb, and when we look at how all these animals help us as therapy animals when we're lonely, depressed, or in nursing homes and other facilities who suffer from PTSD, anxious, depressed, suicidal, how do they know this? And they help us with diabetes. Our pets are healers. And in order to be a healer, in order to restore that inner health, that comes from the soul. We can talk about energy. Yes, there is that energy. But when we have that soul soothing health, that comes from their soul as well. So, yes, I believe that our animals are our earthly, tangible link right back to heaven. And if we just pay attention to them, sit down, it could be outside, it could be within your own home. Sit with a sleeping cat. Sleep, just pay attention to them as they're sleeping, or just a dog. You're gonna find out that what Job was talking about, go and ask the animals and they will teach you. They will teach us. are listening to our dogs as they react to environmental signals when the weather changes. How do they know this? Yes, they can say it's environmental, it's that pure energy, but I believe that comes from that soul source. So I believe that there is that moment when we read everything that has breath has life, and everything that has life has a soul. And I can go on and say, hey, look, our trees, our earth, it knows how to restore itself. And there is a soul within all of creation.
Thank you for having this conversation with me. It was very uplifting and enlightening, and I hope it helps some people too.
I thank you for allowing me to share this with you, and thank you for doing all that you do. Thank you so much.
That's it for today's episode. I want to thank everybody for listening and supporting us. If you want to take that an extra step, consider becoming a member. We just added this to our website, animalposse.com. Scroll down, look for the support tab. Our membership program is going to help us directly support animals in need, whether that be through vaccinations, food, or spay neuter efforts.
Paws in the night, claws in the fight, whiskers twitch and tails take flight. They're calling in stories to spin from the wild to the heart within. Broken wings and hopeful springs, we're the voices for these things. Animal posse, hear the call. We stand together, big and small. Rescue tales, we've got it all. Animal posse, saving them all. The vet's got tips, the rescuer's grit, the foster homes where love won't quit. From a pup in the rain to a bird in pain, every soul's worth the strain. Animal posse, hear the call. We stand together, big and small. Rescue tales, we've got it all. Animal posse, saving them all. Every caller tells a tale, every howl a whispered wail. We rise up, we never fail. This is the bond, the holy grail. Animal posse, hear the call. We stand together, big and small. Rescue tales, we've got it all. Animal posse, saving them all. Every caller tells a tale, every howl a whispered wail. We rise up, we never fail. This is the bond, the holy grail.